Welcome to episode 5083 of Oh My Word, the Tories are really, really desperate. Now, according to the Tories and their media hangers-on, the latest outrage of Labour is being racist against straight white men. Quite the claim, you'd think. Now, I'll explain this. It might sound a bit dry. I'll try not to go too technical about it. This is really desperate on their part, so bear with me. So there's a Young Labour conference. It's for under 27s. It's an equalities conference for groups in society which are underrepresented and face systemic prejudice and discrimination. We're talking about LGBT people. We're talking about BME people. We're talking about people with disabilities. We're talking about women. In a society which, let's be fair, is dominated by straight white men, where BME people face racism, where women are underrepresented in politics and society, are paid less than men, who face systemic sexual harassment, sexual abuse, sexual assault, rape and so on. Now, why am I talking about this here? I'm actually in Highbury Fields, and behind me you can see this plaque. It's Outrage plaque, and it commemorates the first gay pride march in this country. It was marched all the way through here. Now that was way back in 1970. Now back in 1970, you'd only just had partial decriminalisation of homosexuality. Things were a lot worse than they are today, in terms of attitudes, in terms of so many anti-gay laws. Because people struggled, and for LGBTQ people, they organised together, they used their voice, they used their power and strength collectively to transform attitudes and to get rid of those laws. And that's why we're here in terms of the strides we've made ever since. But there's still so far to go. Massive prejudice. I wouldn't hold hands with somebody in the street without fear of abuse, violence or otherwise. LGBT people have far higher levels of mental distress. LGBTQ services are being slashed. I could go on. So we need a space for LGBTQ people to come together, to organise and to take on these issues that specifically affect LGBTQ people. Now, before I make a wider point about this, because this might sound a bit like, why am I going on about this Young Labour conference? Why are the Tories going on about it? Why are they frothing over it? Disabled people, for example. At this equalities conference, they're going to elect their own disabilities officer. Is that discriminating against people who aren't disabled? Or is it just saying, hang on a minute, people who are disabled are in the best possible position to elect somebody who is disabled and understands, because of their own lived experience, the issues that affect disabled people? I try to take an interest in issues that affect disabled people. But as someone who isn't disabled, clearly I will never have the sort of understanding that you need to elect somebody into that position. Now, the Tories actually understand this, because hypocritically, the Tories have an organisation co-founded by Theresa May called Women to Win. And what that does is help train up, give networks to women to get more Tories who are women elected as MPs. Now, they do training events that are only open to women. Is that discriminating against men? Or is it just going, hang on a minute, women are massively underrepresented in politics. We need action to do something about that in a male-dominated society. So let's have this space for women to organise together. It's just basic common sense. But what this is really about is a culture war. The Tories are trying to, in their desperation, open up a culture war. That's why they've used this whole Jacob Rees-Mogg thing the other week, where it all kicked off. Do you remember there was this Barney and a punch was thrown and all the rest? And now they're saying we're going to send more Tory MPs to universities in the hope that it will kick off, because it's about free speech on campus and we've got to defend it. The reason they're doing this is because they are in a pretty bad situation. They have no answers to the massive challenges facing this country, whether it be the lack of secure jobs, falling wages, public services that are being starved of resources, a massive housing crisis, we could go on. So instead what they're trying to do is open up a war, a conflict on cultural issues, because they can't answer the issues that affect people's everyday lives. Now, this is a tactic they're borrowing partly from the US, the populist right in the US, because what the populist right always try to do is say, particularly to white people, particularly to white men, that the left don't care about you. They only care about these minorities. Now, what's so perverse about this? Because many will go, hang on a minute, there are working class white men across the country, you can't say they're privileged just because they're not gay or they're not black. And that's true in the sense that they do face often oppression and exploitation. But not because they're white, not because they're men, not because they're straight. It's because of their economic position as a class. They're working class, and as a consequence of this broken system that the Conservatives defend, they lack secure jobs, they lack affordable homes, the public services they depend on are under strain, their living standards are falling, but that's because of an economic system that oppresses them on the basis of their class. Now you might say, well, shouldn't Labour do something about that? Well, that's the point of the Labour Party. The whole point of Labour is to represent the working class. But class politics, which the Tories and the right themselves denounce as divisive and pitting people against each other, which is about recognising that some have far more wealth and power than others, and that's unjust and unfair and has to be urgently corrected by changing and transforming and overturning the system that causes that inequality, that also has to intersect with being a working class woman or somebody who is a young working class black man. The issues that affect people are different, and that is why it's so important to have movements and spaces for people who have similar shared experiences of oppression and discrimination to overturn those huge injustices. The answer to all of this is socialism. It's building a society that is free of oppression, bigotry and exploitation. And that society, it will benefit women and LGBT people and BME people and disabled people, and it will also benefit the millions of straight white men who are struggling and suffering because of the broken economic system the Tories defend. So I want to hear your thoughts on this. How do we take on this Tory culture war, which is trying to distract from their desperate problems, and of course, because they can't answer the desperate challenges and problems that face this country. So please leave your comments down the line. We've got loads of videos coming up, so click on them if you like. As ever, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.